Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the movie of What If Naruto Got Harem in Justice League. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. In a darkened office sits the form of a female figure in a sleek crimson dress wearing glasses with dark red lenses, tapping away on a computer as a series of numbers appear across the screen. Profits seem to be climbing. Good, though I may need some new contenders for the arena soon. Can't have the fights getting stale, she muttered to herself while pushing up her glasses with her middle finger. Then a message appeared on the screen marked as urgent. Raising an eyebrow, she clicked on it to see its contents, her eyes skimming over the words until her eyes widened. After a few moments, they narrowed in curiosity, then they shined brightly. Her face beaming as a smirk appeared while she crossed her arms under her bust. Seems things were going to get interesting very soon. For now, it was time to fulfill an old promise of hers. The next morning, Konoha. I really hate the academy. Every day it's the same thing. I go there, I pretend to listen to Uruka's boring lectures, get kicked out of me by Sasuke in class spars, ask Uruka for extra training, then he gives the can't give special treatment speech like rinse and repeat, day after day, muttered the form of Naruto Uzumaki as he lazily walked along the road, glaring into empty space. If he was only given a fair chance, then he would be just as good a fighter as anyone else in his class, maybe even be able to put up a fight against the Golden Boy Uchiha instead of being the Duck's punching bag. But no, he was supposed to be the dead last, and his teachers wouldn't do anything to help him or tell him what he was doing wrong. The blonde's musing was broken when he heard the low rumbling of an engine. Turning his head, he saw a long black vehicle that he recognized as a limo. Cars were a rare sight in the elemental nations, usually only in the possession of the rich or in the hands of foreigners. Though in either case, limos were the most common vehicle, or at least the most easily identified in the nations. The car slowed down until it matched his pace, making the boy stop in his tracks, wondering if it was following him or if he was simply in the way. His question was answered as a door seemed to open itself, revealing the form of a beautiful woman, his breath catching in his throat as he dryly swallowed. A blush creeping across his face as she seemed to be eyeing him up and down. Naruto Uzumaki, she asked him, more in the form of a statement than a question since she addressed him by name, making him nod stiffly. My name is Roulette. On your way to the academy, are you allow me to give you a small ride? We have a lot to talk about. She spoke in a sultry tone, waving her finger in a come here motion as she crossed her legs, giving the boy a better view of them. The blonde's hormone-filled body subconsciously eyed her form, making him shake his head violently to break himself from his stupor. And finally, he took a deep breath and replied, sorry, but my friend Anko warned me against going anywhere with strangers. If she was offended by his ogling of her, she certainly didn't show it as she spoke in a calm manner. Good advice from a good friend. But we're not strangers. We're family, Godson. At that last sentence, he cracked up an eyebrow, but then a small smile formed on his face. Oh yeah, the whole I'm your family sh dick. Nice try, but I was already fooled once by that one. You're gonna have to try a little bit harder to convince me, he replied as he crossed his arms, a disbelieving look on his face, which soon fell as the woman called Roulette smiled even wider, a haughty look forming as a casino poker chip appeared between her fingers almost like magic. You a gambler? She asked him in an almost playful manner, earning a confused look from him. Chuckling to herself, she continued to speak. Here's the way I see it, you can either play it safe and keep walking towards your school and continue living a meaningless life fighting against the biased and superstitious nature of your village folk. Or, you can take a small gamble with me and learn what I have to offer, which may turn your whole world upside down and inside out. Care to play? After a few moments of thinking about her words, he decided that it'd be better to take a risk and then judge whether or not she was telling the truth. With a small sigh, he entered into the limo, the door shutting behind him as he took a seat across from her. With that, the limo drove down the street at a slow and deliberate pace. A look of pride flashed across the spectacled woman's face as she spoke. Good choice. I respect the spirit of a gambler and a fighter. Allow me to reintroduce myself as Roulette, businesswoman and your godmother. Handpicked by my old business partner and close personal friend, Kushina Uzumaki, your mother. You knew my mother, so I got my surname from her, huh? He asked with a suspicious glare, wondering if she was trying to yank his chain. Naturally. Allow me to give you the rundown. Your mother came from a clan known as the Uzumakis who had their own island nation and village known as Uzu, which was well on its way to becoming the 6th major nation. But it was destroyed with a coalition of multiple villages sought to destroy Uzu, and afterwards pillage it for its resources and treasures. Konoha was a longtime ally of Uzu, but when your clan needed help the most they never came. Your mother was one of the few, if only survivors. And she had lost everything, home, family, and clan. And she developed a sneaking suspicion that Konoha deliberately allowed Uzu to be destroyed. The trauma caused her to become a merciless and ferocious fighter. During her time as a Kunoichi, she would torture, maim and murder her way through the ranks until she became known as the evil Uzumaki, a woman so feared that not even the nation's cages would ever dare cross her. Her battle prowess drew me to her, so I attempted to abduct her for my gladiator arena. I miserably failed, believing her to be a mindless brute. But instead I found a kindred spirit in her after she deceived me and escaped her confinement. Instead of killing me, we became lifelong friends and partners. She had countless enemies within Konoha, so she made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, and if you were unable to live in and thrive in this backwater village, that I was to take you under my wing, nurture you, and then make you into the most fearsome fighter in the world. So far both of those conditions have been met. Something happened to your mother and you have failed your academy exam twice. And that's the long and short of it, she explained as she rolled the casino chip across her knuckles in a casual manner. As the blonde listened, he didn't feel like this woman was truly lying to him. But there seemed to be certain holes in her story. Funny, I don't remember anything in my history books about a village called Uzu. Pretty sure something like a village being destroyed would have made it into the pages. He spoke in a questioning manner, almost as though he were testing how she'd respond next. Indeed, you are correct. Unless such information was deliberately censored by those in power. She spoke with a knowing smile, pulling open a small compartment revealing a mini-fridge filled with drinks chilling inside. She plucked a small can of soda out and offered it to him. With a shrug, the blonde accepted it and popped it open, sipping at the carbonated beverage for a moment. Those in power, my mother's so-called enemies, why, he asked with a small frown, trying to get all the pieces to this story. Correct. And why else, when people are in a position of power for a long enough time, they will do virtually anything to keep it. Your mother was a threat to them all, since the day she set foot in this village and learned how to fight. Thus, an entire conspiracy was formed, and both you and your mother were into the center of it all. Even now, they are trying to manipulate you. She spoke in a more serious tone as she pulled out a small briefcase and opened it, revealing a file of some kind with his name on it. She then opened it, revealing it to be a very thoroughly recorded set of all his exam results. At first glance, it seems like you're a miserably failing student. But on closer inspection, your tests and exams have all been forged, fixed, and edited against you. On orders of your Hokage, she spoke, then pulled out a letter which bore the handwriting of the Sandame, asking both Iruka and Mizuki to rig the test appropriately. See, they feel threatened by you. They know of your potential. My best guess is, they wanted you to be a full-blown to fill your head with silly and lofty ideals so that they wouldn't need to fear retaliation from you. She explained to them as she reclined back in her seat, allowing the boy a moment to digest this information. Does this also have to do with me being the Kyubai's container, he asked, more in the form of a statement as he started to put everything together. Clever boy. You already know about that. Hey, that's actually the very reason your mother was brought to Konoha. Only an Uzumaki can contain the raw power of the Kyubai. This made her, and by extension you, all the more dangerous. She spoke as she poured herself a glass of wine. Didn't take much to figure out. I was born October the 10th, same night as the Kyubai attack. Not to mention people keep whispering things in a not-so-subtle manner about demons and whatnot whenever I'm around. Still, if my mother was the previous container, that would help explain why I was picked to contain the Biju. But that begs the question, how did the Kyubai get loose in the first place if my mother was supposed to be keeping it, he asked with a small frown. That particular question now ringing in his head since Roulette's story seemed to be making a lot of sense to him at this time. There, I cannot help you. But you could try asking the beast yourself to tell that part of the tale. Whenever you get the chance, I suppose. So do you believe me, she asked with a small smile as she took a sip of wine. So far I do not disbelieve you, he replied in a somewhat guarded tone, still feeling unsure of himself, but at the same time he felt he could put some faith in this woman. Good. Trust, respect, and loyalty are to be earned and never given. Though sometimes you may need to take a gamble. If you'd like to bet on me, I could provide for you wealth, privilege, and the chance to unleash your true power and strength. What do you think, she asked him, extending out a hand towards him. After thinking for a few moments, the blonde finally spoke in a firm voice. Nobody got anywhere by constantly playing it safe. And earlier you asked if I was a gambler. The answer is yes. With that said, he accepted her hand into his own and shook it. She then pulled him in and planted a searing hot kiss on his lips, her warm tongue slipping into his mouth, making his eyes widen at receiving a French kiss, from an adult woman no less. She then released his hand and slowly pushed him back with a stiletto-covered foot until his back was pressed against the seat. He blushed a bright red color as his hormones raged inside his body. He could even still feel the warmth of her lips against his own. She adjusted her spectacles and her lips, as though she had just tasted a yummy treat. There, our contract has been sealed with a kiss. You'll find that I don't do things halfway. She spoke as she trailed the tip of her stiletto down his chest and stomach until she retracted it, crossing one leg over the other with a saucy grin. Noting his state of blushing, she couldn't help but inwardly laugh and find it a little cute. He was still a growing teenage boy, likely going through and still discovering the attractions of the opposite. It was definitely going to be fun to torment him a little during this chapter of his life. Now then, do you have any personal belongings or prospective friends to bring with you before we depart? I get a very distinctive feeling that this village won't be a very safe place for you, she asked him in a professional manner, snapping the boy from his stupor. Yeah, I got a few friends in mind that'll be happy to pack up and go. So who was my father? He replied back, his last question being more of an afterthought since it hadn't crossed his mind until now. I never met your father, and Kushina would always get this sour look on her face whenever he was brought up in conversation. By my understanding from what little she spoke of him, he never truly loved you as a father should have. She explained in a sincere tone, wishing she could be able to provide more information on the subject. I see. Maybe someday I'll find out more about that. When do we leave exactly? He asked at the end, wondering how much time he had to try and gather the few friends he had in Konoha so that they wouldn't be left behind. Today, was Roulette's reply in a tone of finality, earning a nod from the blonde as he looked out the limo's tinted windows. A large smile forming on his face as he felt that things had become clearer for him, and now he had finally met his family. But then was the Sandaime truly his enemy? He still had some doubts clawing at the back of his mind since the man was like a grandfather to him. How would the old man react if he were to grill him with this information? I know that look. You still need a little extra incentive that your gamble won't be a wasteful one. Here, how about you ask your Hokage himself? It's not like he knows where you are right now, does he? And he won't even be able to lay a finger on you with my protection. The black-haired woman spoke as she pulled out a telephone hidden beneath a leather armrest. She tapped on the phone a few times, then extended it to him, instructing him to push the green button. He nodded and did so, bringing the phone up to his ear, listening to the phone ring until the aged voice of the Hokage spoke on the other end. Hello, hers and Sarutobi, Sandaime Hokage speaking. Hey old man, wanted to ask you something. The blonde replied in a flat tone, a small gasp of shock coming from the earpiece. Naruto-kun, how do you get the number to my office? I don't remember giving it to you. The aged Hokage spoke in obvious surprise, followed by some coughing. It was likely he was smoking his pipe and choked on some smoke. Doesn't matter. Wanted to ask, were you ever planning on telling me about my mother? He asked with venom dripping off his every word. The blonde's hand gripping the telephone tightly. Your mother, Naruto-kun? I never knew her. Whereas a question like that coming from hers and asked in a confused tone, causing the blonde to decide and change his question a bit. Really, let's try this then. Does the name Kushina the evil Uzumaki ring any bells? The blonde asked with a devious grin stretching across his face. He glanced in his godmother's direction, who was also smiling, and gave him a nod of approval. From the phone there was only silence. I'll take the stunned silence as a yes. So then you must also know about about the Uzumaki clan. Would you also care to explain why you purposely had my tests and exams rigged from the jump? The blonde asked, bombarding the Sandaime with questions. The Hokage stammered for a few moments, until he finally formed a coherent sentence. Who told you these things, Naruto-kun? Oh, my godmother did. She calls herself Roulette. The blonde replied in an all-too-casual manner as he sipped at some soda to wet his whistle. Godmother, Naruto-kun? You don't even have a godmother, whoever this woman is. She's feeding you nothing but lies. Hers and spoke, almost screaming into the mouthpiece of his phone, making the boy cringe slightly in discomfort. As far as you knew, and for some reason I find her far more trustworthy than you right about now. And that whatever you may say next will be nothing but excuses or honeyed lies. So long, old-timer. The next time we see each other, I'll be standing over you, crushing your throat underfoot. With that said, the blonde returned the phone to his godmother, who promptly hanged up before the Sandaime could even get a word in. So, you made your final decision then? She asked with a knowing smile, already aware of the answer to her question. Yup, he knew the entire time and never told me. Never dropped a hint to me, or anything for that matter. He didn't even try to own up to his lies, or come clean when I confronted him just now. You were right, Konoha is not safe for me anymore. The sooner we get my friends and leave this dump, the better. He responded in a matter-of-fact tone. Good. Be sure to write up a list of your friends that may wish to leave with us and I'll handle the rest. Then we can get your training underway. She responded with some pride in her voice. We'll do. What was your job again? You mentioned something about a gladiator arena, he asked with some curiosity, wondering how his godmother was so obviously wealthy. Yes, I am the manager of an underground gladiator arena and casino. I usually pit skilled fighters or superpowered beings in fights to the death. She rectified it, and made it so that only the vilest of people were put to death. You'd be amazed how much people would pay to see the killer of a loved one be slaughtered in an execution-style match. She liked to call it Bloodsport. I think she got the name from a movie, she explained while casually waving her hand from side to side. Seems kinda wrong to profit off people's grief. Naruto commented as he crossed his arms with a questioning look. Maybe a bit, but money's money. And if it brings the family some real closure, then what does it matter? Would you rather a murderer or a rapist live off your tax-paying money? Sitting in a cozy cell, eating 3 meals a day, your mother had a firm belief in the eye for an eye approach. Thieves get their hands cut off. Rapists are castrated. Murderers are gutted. That sort of thing. She always said the best way to stop crime at the source is to put the perpetual fear of God into them and shove the knowledge of guaranteed punishment down their throats. Roulette explained the principle behind one of her most profitable enterprises. Putting it like that makes better sense. Yes, it's a gift to see in shades of gray, which is why people try and separate things into black and white to make it simpler for them. He responded with a thoughtful expression. And there's that practicality that I love so much from your mother. She was always able to see things in a bigger picture. If you're half the fighter that your mother was, I know you will definitely do well in life and in my arena. So then, executioner or entertainer? She spoke with a large smile, adjusting her glasses which glinted in the light. Sounds like fun. I think I might try both, once I get the proper experience. The blonde replied with a broad smile, cracking his knuckles slightly. The thought of being able to fight and grow stronger almost seemed quite exciting to him, and it seemed his godmother was very eager to supply. 2 years later, tonight, we have ourselves a very special execution. The chosen victim, one Victor's ass, straight from Gotham City, spoke the form of one Anko Mitarashi, acting the part of MC as she spoke into a microphone. The crowds booing at the form of the serial killer trapped inside the arena as he twirled a pair of knives in his hands. For those who do not know, Victor is a wanted serial killer who kills his victims, then carves a tally mark into his flesh for each kill. Batman and the GCPD have apprehended this monster countless times. And what did? They sent him to Arkham Asylum only for this maniac to bust out each time and add more to his already high body count. But not tonight. Tonight, this freak will be getting his just desserts. I present to you your favorite executioner and the undefeated champ of the arena, the one, the only, Naruto Uzumaki, Anko announced, causing a spotlight to appear showing the form of Naruto himself. Despite his youth, he already stood at 6'12", and he wore a crimson trenchcoat with a pair of black-colored jeans and combat boots. He wore no shirt under his open trenchcoat. Instead, he let his chest and chiseled abs out for all to see. Across his chest was a tattoo in the form of the Japanese kanji for wrath. The crowds went wild, cheering for the blonde to kill the murderer, desiring that Victor get his final comeuppance. With a maniacal grin, Zsasz leaped forward, his knives at the ready, already poised for the blonde's vital spots. With a small smile, he merely swatted away the incoming weapons, then grabbed the scarred man's wrists, crushing them with a loud snapping noise. Yeah, nice try. See, this isn't actually a fight. It's an execution. So I'm meant to kill you in a nice and brutal manner for everyone to see. Despite your body count, I find you to be pretty small potatoes. And I'm rambling. Sorry, I ramble when I'm bored. I'll get to killing you now. Sorry for the wait. The blonde spoke with a shrug, yanking the killer towards him, then headbutting the scarred man, causing his nose to crunch. But before Victor could fall to the ground, the blonde had his hands around the killer's head, then began applying pressure. Zsasz trying to push away the blonde's hands with his forearms, but it proved useless since his hands were useless and the blonde's grip refused to loosen. Then, the sounds of bone crunching could be heard, and the serial killer began to scream in pain, starting to drip from his tear ducts, his nostrils and ears. The dripping of crimson liquid then turned to a large gush. Victor's screams soon turned to nothing but gurgling noises, until a wet-sounding crunch was heard, his head popping like a balloon filled with chili as brain matter sprayed about. The crowds roaring in approval that a convicted murderer and repeat offender was finally put down like the rabid animal he was. That's all, folks, Naruto announced to the crowd, giving a small victory sign before exiting the arena. Unknown to him and the crowds, a certain Archer was watching the entire event undercover. That night, "This is Speedy. To the Justice League, we have a pretty major problem. And truth be told, I don't think I can handle this on my own." The red-haired Archer spoke with a scowl, almost angry at himself for having to call for assistance. On the plus side, it wasn't terribly hard to get in touch with the JLA if you knew how, which made this a bit more convenient. But still very annoying. "We hear you. What is the situation?" Martian Manhunter responded in a professional manner, waiting for the rogue Archer's report. Roulette and her underground arena have been running a sick game they call Bloodsport. It is essentially an execution where people pay to watch criminals be murdered. The latest victim is Victor's ass. The favorite executioner and the current champion is called Naruto Uzumaki. Allegedly, he is Roulette's godson. I asked the patrons about him, and they all say the same things. That he's the crowd favorite and is completely unbeatable. After careful observation, I have confirmed that he has strength above the average human norm, and he is a skilled martial artist, but I haven't been able to determine his full range of skills yet. Speedy spoke, giving the details he had covertly gathered, though it was difficult to maintain his cover after watching such a slaughter. Understood. We shall dispatch the team for a covert operation. Stand by until they arrive at your coordinates. Manhunter spoke with a nod, cutting off the connection. With a small sigh, the Archer decided to pass the time by checking his arrows to ensure they wouldn't malfunction when he needed them most. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait long for the kitty JLA to show up. That was pretty quick. The JLA got you twiddling your thumbs in your clubhouse. And what's with the new faces? Speedy asked with a small sneer at seeing 3 new females. He recognized Aqualad, Robin, Kid Flash, Miss Martian, Superboy, and Artemis. But there was also some new ones too. An orange-skinned female, and a cloaked girl with pale gray skin. The only one he did recognize of the newcomers was Batgirl. Speedy, meet Starfire and Raven, our newest members. The JLA already gave us your report. Good thing you found out about this. I never would imagine people would pay for that kind of thing. Aqualad spoke in a serious tone, feeling that it was definitely their duty to put a stop to this inhumane practice. The term Bloodsport sounding more and more appropriate. I am new to your Earth, but the revenge seems to be a powerful motivation amongst all species, regardless of who they are or where they come from. Starfire spoke with a somewhat saddened expression, the others all nodding in agreement to her statement. All right, we shall infiltrate covertly as patrons, then from there, we'll coordinate and plan out an assault to apprehend Roulette and this Naruto person. Robin, Batgirl, Artemis, and Speedy will take points since they'll stand out the least in the crowd. Miss Martian, you try to scout around and figure out the patrols of their security and the positioning of their cameras and points of interest. The rest of us will keep to the shadows until you all find a decent opening for us to strike." Any objections? Aqualad spoke in his leader tone, earning nothing but silent agreement from the others. Now that the infiltration plan was set up, they would need to get inside and figure out a more detailed plan. But still, one thing was bothering them all. There was only one uncertainty that stood out amongst everything else. What was this Naruto Uzumaki truly capable of? He was an unknown element and a mystery that they were all unfamiliar with. But still, they had fought worse, right? Roulette's office. Intercepted transmission. Naruto spoke as he listened to the interaction between both Speedy and the JLA. It seemed like the Archer's communicator wasn't truly secure. Rookie mistake on his part. His godmother having a confident smirk which turned into a full smile. Information was an extremely valuable thing to have. Sometimes it was worth more than gold or diamonds. And now they knew that somebody would be coming to break up their operations. Seems that you'll finally be able to fight some heroes. I was hoping to wait a bit longer, but that's okay. I doubt that the League will be sending any big-timers like Superman, Batman, and the like. Roulette spoke in a somewhat excited tone, already calculating the money to be earned from her godson fighting the so-called heroes. Yup, at least I'll be able to get a decent warm-up. Yes, this means that a line's about to be drawn in the sand. Now we'll have to see who's going to fire the first shot. In either case, we'll be going to war with the Justice League. Then, we have an old score to settle with Konoha. Naruto spoke while rubbing his neck with a yawn. Don't worry, I know that you can throw down with the best of them. Best part, not a single one of them will see your power coming. Not even Batman. The contingency plan for everything guy will be able to pin you down if he can't find a strategy against you. She spoke as she adjusted her glasses with a small yet confident smile. Assuming I give him the chance. This is going to be something special. I take it that it'll be broadcasted live across the world, Naruto asked, knowing his godmother was going to want to reel in more clientele. Naturally, but this serves both our purposes. A live broadcast will satiate my greed, and you will be able to tear the JLA a new one. Win-win. She spoke with some sadistic glee, which Naruto seemed to share with a devious smile. It was only a matter of time before his opponents showed up. May as well try and relax until then. You know, Roulette, I kinda need to unwind a bit after crushing a sociopath's head like a watermelon. He spoke as he threw off his trench coat, his toned body now on full display. Of course, only the best for my godson. Lie down, please. She spoke, pointing to a massage table. Her godson nodding in understanding and lied on it in a face-down position. Roulette sighed as she unzipped the back of her dress, letting it fall and pool around her ankles. Then she discarded her stiletto heels, leaving her only wearing her spectacles, crimson silk fingerless gloves, and of course her trademark snake tattoo. Taking a deep breath, she dashed forward, then jumped in the air, her bare feet landing directly on his back. But the whiskered teen barely even budged under her as she landed gracefully on him. Raising her hands over her head, she grabbed onto a metal handlebar to maintain her balance as she used her feet to help ease the tension and knots in his back. You are lucky to be massaged like this. I just had a very expensive pedicure just yesterday. But, small sacrifices for your happiness. She spoke in a mock-hurt tone, gingerly working out a knot below his left shoulder blade. I imagine you have killed men for less than ruining a perfect pedicure. He replied, letting his godmother do the work, sighing in relaxation from her delicate and practiced touch. True, and they never saw it coming. I would put them on this table, right here, where you're lying. Then I would offer a special massage with a happy ending, easing them into a relaxed state. Then I'd snap their necks before they could even yelp. She spoke, her foot slowly trailing up his spine, giving him a tingling sensation. She then lifted herself up slightly and asked him to flip over. He obeyed, allowing her to massage his chest and stomach, and giving him a perfect view of her form. Stupid and dirty old men, Naruto asked in a half-joking tone, but she still nodded in confirmation. You know, I don't usually like younger men. Far too immature, inexperienced, and lacking in finesse. But you are a worthy specimen. If you weren't my godson, you would definitely be a kill to remember. She spoke with a fiendish grin, her eyes gaining an edge to them, akin to a hungry predator. Oh, being prey to a cougar doesn't sound so bad. What would you do to me if I were your prey? He asked her, groaning slightly in discomfort as a tent started to form in his pants. I would put you out on this table and slowly take my time tenderizing you like a fine piece of meat. I would make you crave me and wish to indulge in the forbidden fruit of a woman more than twice your age. She spoke as she lowered herself slowly, crouching down like a feline as she deftly reached down and unzipped his pants. But I am not a cougar, I am a boa. I will slowly coil around you, entrapping you, mesmerizing you with my divine body. Then, I would slowly squeeze you, not enough to suffocate you, but definitely keep you in my coils, ready for the feast. She spoke as she rubbed her chest against his, her tongue slipping out of her mouth like a serpent as she pulled back then and removed his pants. I would defile your young body, putting you deep into my hungry womb. Then, I would slowly drain you, the virile, hormone-filled seed from you, until you have nothing left to give me. Then, when you are weak, helpless, and nothing but a vegetable, I would swallow you whole. And thus, the young little cub has been devoured by the mature prey. Does that not sound erotic? I find it quite arousing. She spoke with a hungry look in her eyes. Doesn't sound so bad to me. Fortunately, you aren't a real-life boa, otherwise you might eat me. He replied as their lips met. Can I am still a cougar as you graciously called me, a hungry one at that. and you will be my young prey. And I shall definitely do all that I described, figuratively of course. She spoke as she tore off his boxers, her face twisting slightly with a malicious predatory-like smile. The blonde could only smile back, knowing that she was going to rock his world. The next morning, Suo, the point of infiltration is to blend in, to not stand out, and not be discovered, right? Asked the form of a certain teenage speedster as he scratched the back of his head. Yup, was the brief reply of both Aqualad and Robin as they looked about at their surroundings, their eyes narrowing slightly. Except there's nobody here, Kid Flash pointed out, his arm making a sweeping motion as he gestured towards the empty seats surrounding the arena, then continued to speak. So if that's the case, we completely stand out now. Robin grimaced and added in his own observations, clearly the setup towards a trap. They knew we were coming here. Speedy, your communicator was secure, right? The boy wonder asked, causing everyone to turn their attention to the archer in question. I am absolutely positive that it was secure, he replied through gritted teeth, failing to suppress a frustrated growl. Clearly he was lying, and now they were likely going to pay for his mistake. Sensing the growing tension in the atmosphere, Starfire spoke up. Let us not start the arguing amongst friends. Since this place is empty, we need not worry about the hurting of innocence. Her innocence and cheerful nature helped relieve some of the tension, making some of her more serious teammates begrudgingly nod in agreement. Sighing, the Atlantean spoke to both his Martian teammate and the newly resident empath Raven. Sense anyone nearby? There could be guards waiting for an ambush. At his question, both shook their heads, responding that there were no signs of anyone in hiding. Of course, that only applies to guards of an organic nature. Fortunately, both Robin and Batgirl had briefly used their scanners to search for any signs of machinery, but came up empty as well. It was highly unusual that there wasn't anyone around. Not even a drone or a robot. Suddenly, Superboy's ears perked up as his hearing picked up a noise coming from the arena. It sounded like wheels. Everyone, someone is here. He spoke as he pointed down towards the blood-stained arena, a spotlight appearing which shined on a blonde figure who was casually rolling towards the center of the arena in a computer chair, with his back turned towards the group. Dr. Stein, eat your heart out, the blonde quietly whispered to himself, though it was picked up by the clone Kryptonian. The blonde stranger then slowly turned towards the group of heroes and then waved in a somewhat mocking manner towards them and spoke aloud. Here I was, hoping for an entree from the JLA. Instead, I'm only served appetizers. That's okay though, this will be all in good fun. With a snap of his fingers, multiple cameras came floating into existence, some of them positioning themselves near the heroes and the other cameras surrounding the blonde himself. That's him, Naruto Uzumaki. Be careful, we don't know what kind of tricks he's got up his sleeve. Speedy warned everyone as he readied his bow. The team all nodded in acknowledgement towards his warning, then all descended towards the arena to face the whiskered teen. Weird, he doesn't seem that much older than us. This Martian spoke with a small frown as she tried to take a small peek into the blonde boy's head, only to be met by an iron wall of mental defenses that prevented her mental probing. Doesn't matter, he is still a merciless killer. He murdered Victor's ass by crushing his head barehanded. Speedy harshly reminded her, earning a nod from the Martian and a bored yawn from Naruto. Sure I did. What's your point? Victor was a serial killer. If anything, I think I did a public service. Naruto responded with a shrug, smirking as the cameras rolled, his exchange with these heroes being broadcasted live across the entirety of the world excluding the elemental nations. He didn't want anyone back home to know how strong he'd gotten. You call murdering someone for money a public service? Robin asked with a heated glare, almost as if he wanted to light the Jinchuriki on fire with only his eyeballs. Hey, I provide a service. If people want to pay me and my godmother to snuff out a sociopath like Zsasz, then that's their choice. At the very least, they'll be sleeping like little babies since old Victor is now 6 feet under and won't be preying on anybody else. What was your solution? Robin? Old boy sticking Victor in Arkham Asylum, putting him out of sight and mind until he breaks out again and kills more people. How's that worked out for you? Or any other member of your rogues gallery? Naruto questioned with a bored yawn, flipping the boy Wonder the Bird, leaving Robin momentarily stunned. I wasn't planning on really starting this fight, but since your JLA would rather sacrifice innocent lives to maintain that whole holier than thou no killing code, I guess it's my job to set you people straight and make you choke on a big nasty pill called reality. So who wants to throw down first? You can come at me all at once or one at a time. Makes no difference to me, the Jinchuriki muttered as he stood up and kicked his chair to the side, his sapphire blue eyes scanning the heroes in front of him for any signs of aggression. Let's see, how many of you are there? 10 of you. Sheesh, this might take a little too long. Guess I'll speed things up a bit. Naruto spoke as he rubbed the back of his head, then with a smirk he whispered, Conqueror's Haki. All at once, the team felt an overpowering aura that seemed to be trying to crush them. Both Raven and Miss Martian quickly succumbed to it since they were an empath and telepath respectively. Starfire was then rendered unconscious, followed by Batgirl and finally Artemis, leaving only the male half of the team still standing, albeit they were heavily sweating and seemed to have temporarily lost the ability to breathe correctly, as evidenced by their heaving chests. There, that's better. To be honest, I don't like to fight women all that much unless they're total. Then it's much more bearable to beat them down a peg. Now then, who's first, gents? The blonde asked mockingly, although he could almost swear that his godmother was laughing at him for his preferential treatment from her own office. Without waiting for a plan of action, Kid Flash zipped across the arena floor at full speed to tackle the Jinchuriki. But Naruto merely lifted his leg up then kicked forward, a loud snapping noise ringing as the speedster fell to the ground, his kneecap shattered making his leg for a V shape as he screamed in pain. If you can catch a speedster, the easiest way to shut them down is to break their legs. Naruto spoke as he lifted his leg up again to break the boy's other leg, only for Superboy to charge him at full force to body slam him, the clone Kryptonian's eyes glowing a burning red. Armament, the blonde shouted, an Inkai black aura surrounding his fist as it collided against Superboy's jaw, the impact causing a shockwave that blew back the remaining heroes a few feet. Then, the Kryptonian himself was blown back by the blonde's fist, sending him into a wall, leaving him unconscious as dribbled out of the corner of his mouth. Faye, for someone meant to be a knockoff of the Man of Steel, this guy sure has a glass jaw, Naruto commented with a yawn, visibly bored by these heroes whom he considers to be little more than rookies. He was snapped out of his yawning streak as he snatched an arrow from the air, then tossed it aside before it exploded in a bright light that blinded him. Flashbangs, Naruto muttered as he rubbed his eyes, then sensed the remaining 3 heroes bull-rushing him. Ah, the perks of Haki. Call me an overpowered. Naruto cackled as he raised up his hands, then caught an incoming kick from Robin in one hand, while the other had grabbed Aqualad by the throat. With a flick of his wrist, he twisted the Boy Wonder's leg, making a loud snapping noise, then tossed him aside. He sensed another arrow coming his way and used the Atlantean as a meat shield, causing the water dweller to yell in pain as the projectile exploded on his back. You want to know one of several reasons as to why you can't beat me? Answer: you can't fight me with the intent of killing me. You heroes always hold yourselves back from going for the win. That's why you always struggle and get kicked around. Seriously, how many heroes does it take to just fight one guy? Naruto asked as he tossed Aqualad aside, then dashed forward, grabbing Speedy by his hands before the archer had time to reach for another arrow. Here's another good question. What's an archer's most valued tool? Answer: their fingers. With a smirk, the blonde squeezed down until Speedy's finger bones shattered beneath the Jinchuriki's grip, his mouth letting out a soundless scream while he barely held on to consciousness from the pain. Then, as if to add insult to injury, the blonde brought his knee up, smashing it against the archer's groin to finish him off, causing Speedy's legs to crumple beneath him like jelly as he sank to the floor in a blissful state of unconsciousness. With a smirk, the Jinchuriki flipped a giant middle finger towards the cameras and spoke, "This the best you can do, Justice League? You really think that your brand of justice can fix the world? I'll give you one warning. Leave me and my godmother Roulette to our business. If you send any of your heroes to shut us down, I'll fight them all and capture them myself for my own private collection. And remember, there is a difference between helping the mentally ill and unstable and snuffing out pure evil. TTFN, ta-ta for now. I'll be keeping these junior heroes as collateral. See you around. And next time try sending one of your big timers. I love a challenge." With that said, the cameras switched off, leaving a fuming and angered Justice League and a curious populace of Earth. What if Naruto was right? What if the JLAS justice wasn't helping anything? Regardless of the answer, both Naruto and Roulette would profit either way. Within the darkest confines of Roulette's facilities are cells meant to keep even metahumans and other superpowered beings in check, all of which received the latest upgrades, courtesy of LexCorp and Cadmus. Right now, amidst the cells of solitary confinement, the heroes all sat in darkness, unable to tell what time it was, much less how much time had passed. Food hadn't come for a long time, leaving their bellies roaring for nourishment, and they were also exhausted and unable to sleep. Why couldn't they sleep? Well, if one of the junior heroes starts to drift off into a blissful state of rest, a pair of speakers clicks on inside of their cell and starts blasting obnoxiously loud heavy metal music to force them awake. In another room, Roulette sat in her office with her godson, the former in a state while the latter massages her shoulders. Seems the heroes are reaching their breaking point. You really think you can break them and pull them over to our side? She asked him, followed by a low from the blonde working out a small knot at the base of her neck with his thumbs. Not all of them. Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad are way too loyal to their teachers. Superboy seems to be obsessed with gaining his father's approval, and besides, we can use him for something else. And Speedy, I hear that he's a whiny little douchebag that thinks he's owed. Reminds me of someone else I knew back home. But the ladies, I think it may be possible for them to be swayed. He responded, his hands leaving her shoulders and then lowering to her toned stomach. Are you sure you're not giving any preferential treatment to the fair? She quipped with a saucy smile, knowing his one weakness involved females. Maybe. But didn't you once mind control a bunch of heroines to fight in all-female gladiator matches? He retorted with a chuckle, and then cupped her large breasts, making Roulette lightly slap his hands away. Touché, darling. Touché. But please, let us deal with business first, then we can get to pleasure. She spoke in a teasing tone. It wouldn't be good for the boy if she didn't occasionally discipline him and keep him under some control. Otherwise she would never get any work done. Okay, I'll wait. As fun as it would be, I guess we can't spend all our time between the sheets. Say you got a DNA scan from the heroes, right? You ID any of them yet? He asked, fishing around for some leverage he could use against the heroes. Oh, I did. I think at least one of them will give you some ammo. Roulette responded with a devilish smile as she pushed up her glasses, very much looking forward to seeing how her godson would get into the heroines' heads. Later, Miss Martian paced around her cell. She had repeatedly attempted to phase through the walls to escape, calling on her uncle's teachings. But with each attempt, something would zap her and force her back. Even if she could phase through the solid walls, the pain might make her concentration slip and then messy results could occur. Groaning, she slumped to the floor, some dark circles forming under her eyes from lack of sleep, and she was so hungry that she kept on fantasizing about a mountain made of pancakes, which only added to her hunger. Suddenly, the door opened and in came the form of her captor, Naruto himself, with a smug grin. Evening, morning, and afternoon. Whatever time of day you think it is. Miss Martian, right, good to meet you. He spoke as he crouched down to meet her at eye level. Well, what do you want? Where are my teammates? She demanded. She really wanted to punch him in the face, but gut instinct told her that was a very bad idea, especially since he managed to incapacitate the entire team single-handedly. Your little friends are around, here and there, somewhere in our little prison. And what do I want? I think I might like to keep you as a pet. I never had a cute alien girl before. He answered almost mockingly, then he gently stroked her cheek, causing her to angrily smack his hand away. Don't touch me, she screamed out, sleep deprivation and hunger adding to her rage. But Naruto merely smiled and took a few steps back into the doorway and produced a plate filled with waffles smothered in maple syrup and butter, along with a glass of milk. Hungry, it's a master's duty to feed their pet. He spoke with a smirk, the smell of the food causing her stomach to almost scream out for it, as indicated by the loud rumbling. Indian tried her hardest to quiet it down, but it was no use. The sweet smell of food almost broke her and reduced her into a sobbing mess. Then, without a word, the blonde placed the plate and glass in front of her and took a step back. Go on ahead, pet. A good master doesn't let their pet starve. He spoke in a more reassuring tone, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed to let her enjoy the meal. No, you're a mutiler. You hurt my friends. She whimpered, trying her best to refuse him. She wouldn't let him get any satisfaction from this humiliation he was subjecting her to. It was all some kind of trick. Call me whatever you want. I stopped caring ages ago. My godmother taught me that good and evil are concepts and perceptions, not absolutes. You see, it takes a very special kind of person to see in shades of gray. And your friends meddled in our business. Their own incompetence and inability to fight at their best got them hurt. I was defending myself. I could have simply killed you all and be done with you, but I only kill people who deserve it or are totally unredeemable. He explained and nudged the plate of waffles over to her with his foot, only for it to be shoved back by the Martian girl. Now you're just being difficult. Maybe, just maybe you should get to know me a bit better. How about you take a look-see inside my head, see for yourself what makes me tick, he asked as he lowered his mental defenses, allowing Mgan to enter into his mind. She poked around for a few moments and then saw his sad and lonely childhood. She could see and feel every single memory that he experienced, and it was quickly overwhelming her. She tried to retract her mental probe, only for it to be trapped in a vice grip, unable to leave his mind. Not yet, Miss Martian. You still need to get to know me. You gotta see the entire movie. He spoke out loud and dragged her back into his memories, forcing her to live out his entire childhood, to hear every single disdainful word from the adults, feel his anger and disappointment in his academy days, all of it. Please stop, no more, it's too much, Miss Martian whimpered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Unable to free herself from his mind, she got up and started beating his chest with her fists, but due to her starvation, it had little to no effect. Make it stop, she begged him, clutching at her head as each memory flashed inside of her mind. Finally, he let go of her, and her body collapsed to the ground, covered in sweat, and the flow of tears from her eyes refused to stop. See what made me into what I am, my village and its people molded me and shaped me. Roulette tempered me and made me into something better, something that wouldn't ever be powerless ever again, and I use my strength to punish the worst types of scum humanity has to offer. Understand me better now, he asked at the end as he knelt down and moved some strands of her crimson hair to the side. The Martian trembling as she curled up into a ball. I'll take that as a yes. Do eat up before you waffles get cold. I hate for food to go to waste, and I can't let my cute pet go hungry. Be seeing you around, Miss Martian. He spoke and then planted a short and sweet kiss on her forehead before departing. When the door shut behind him, Mgan dragged herself over to the plate of food, trying her hardest not to wolf it down like an animal. Her tears fell off of her face and into the syrup, and she then sniffled slightly while asking herself how can anyone allow a child to suffer like that. Finally she took a bite of the crisp waffles, and suddenly in an almost lewd manner as she chewed, and the waffle almost melted inside her mouth, mixing with the sweet butter and syrup. Now having a deeper appreciation to having something to eat. She jumped slightly when she heard something clink behind her. Looking over her shoulder, it was a collar with a blank name tag on it. She picked it up and inspected it, finding really nothing out of the ordinary about it. She then blushed a bit, realizing he was serious about wanting her as a pet. She tossed the collar into the corner and turned her attention back to her meal, greedily gulping down some milk, but at the back of her mind, would it really be so bad being his pet? He wasn't a bad person, just given a terrible hand in life. And his godmother gave him a way out of his misery. Maybe this was his way of giving her a chance too. With a small whine, she retrieved the collar again and put it around her neck, letting the clasps click together and the tag jingled a bit. Maybe if she wore it and gained his approval, then he'd give her more yummy food. A good master feeds his pet. Raven Cell, Azarath Metrian Zinthos, was the mantra Raven repeated over and over again as she meditated deeply. It would take more than annoying music and hunger to make her break from this torture. The Halfdaman hoped that her meditation would hold off her bodily needs until help arrived. She then felt something that interrupted her meditation: feelings of empathy, hope, concern, and a ferocious craving for love and attention. He had arrived. She opened her eyes and saw him enter inside her cell, carrying a plate of waffles in hand with a glass of milk. "Thought you might be hungry." He spoke with a small smile, but the empath simply stared blankly at him. "I am not," she blankly replied in an uncaring manner, still staring him down to give him a sense of unease. "Suit yourself. I'll eat it myself. Can't let food get wasted," he answered and sat down on the floor in a cross-legged position as he cut away at the waffles and began eating it in front of the Halfdaman empath. She knew he was just trying to torture her with food. It wouldn't work. She tried to return to her meditation, but stopped when she sensed feelings of rage and aggression coming from him. No, not from him, it was coming from inside of him. She sensed a deep well of power and suddenly realized there was far more to him than she first realized. "You're not so different from me, are you?" she asked him, gaining some interest. "Correct. Takes one to know one. Yeah, but mine doesn't run through my bloodstream." "Lucky me. I know some of your backstory." "Halfdaman, mother was raped by dimension-conquering demon. All that jazz, right?" he asked her, earning a stiff nod from the pale-skinned sorceress. "Yes," was all she said as she tried to get a better reading on his emotions and found some deep scars inside of him, born from unfathomable loneliness and despair. She could tell he had suffered immensely, possibly even more than herself. "You know, Raven, we shouldn't be enemies. We are kindred spirits, you and I. You suffered much like I did, all because of the circumstances of your birth. Am I right? You were all alone, but unlike me, you were taught some control of your powers and were given a proper education. I never even had that. But I digress. You're a smart girl, I think. Do you really think that it is okay to sacrifice human lives, just to maintain some lofty no-killing code?" he asked her with a large grin, earning a questioning look from her. "Let me break it down for you. Between the loss of human life and property damage left in the wake of supervillains, many of which employ technology or powers to cause mass destruction, does it really help anyone to put these kinds of crooks behind bars? Would it not, in the long run of things, save far more lives to snuff out people like the Joker or anyone else like that?" he asked her, making her consider his words for a few moments. "So you believe you have the right to judge others, choose who lives and dies on a whim?" she asked him, questioning his morals. "No, I don't really have that kind of right. I'm not a judge or anything. But someone's got to clean up the trash of society, and I don't see anyone else stepping up to the plate. My latest kill, Zaz, let me tell you a little something about him. The man was part of an underground pit fight where children were forced to kill each other. Then Zaz would kill the last one standing as a championship fight. The whole thing was rigged. A bunch of rich fat cats gambled on the lives of kids, and old Zaz could keep adding on to his already high bot count. You know what Batman and his crew did? Lock Zaz away again. Victor should have been sent to the gas chambers for that. Where's the justice in that? Did those children get their justice? I don't think so, not while Zaz lived and breathed." The whiskered teen ranted on for a short while, his words deeply moving Raven and making her think on the logistics of jailing versus killing criminals. And he made a lot of sense, actually. "I see. And so profiting off your kills is only business then?" she asked him in a blank tone, staring deeply into his sapphire blue eyes. "Hey, if people want to throw money towards me and roulette to kill infamous criminals and killers, then that's their business and their choice. Besides, money is of no concern to me, only the end goal," he replied in a dismissive tone. Raven could only nod in understanding, sensing a certain kinship to him, and so far she could sense that he had been completely honest with her. "I shall think on what you have said. I have always had mixed feelings on the Justice League's code of morals. I suppose I just needed someone with an outside opinion." She spoke in an even tone, and then returned to her meditations, resuming her mantra. "MK, that's all I want is for you people to think. Not blindly follow somebody cause they say so. If you want something to eat, give a holler. Cameras are always watching you." He responded and then exited her cell, but left behind the glass of milk for her to drink in case she was thirsty. When the door shut behind him, Raven cracked open an eye and smirked just a little bit. It seems that Naruto person was quite the contradiction, and a pretty interesting person to say the least. "Artemis Cell." The blonde archer sighed angrily as she paced around the room, her teeth chattering slightly as she felt it like it was an ice box inside of her cell. Goosebumps formed on her skin since her suit was really designed for cold environments. How long had she been here? Hours, days? It was impossible to tell right now, and she had no means of communicating with her teammates right now. Even Mgan's mental link between the teams seems to have been cut off somehow. So far, it seemed like her captor's strategy was to wear her down with hunger and lack of sleep, and this cold was also to keep her on edge. It was definitely obvious that her jailers seemed to have some knowledge in torture and interrogation. It wouldn't be that easy to make her crack, though. Being the daughter of a villain had definitely hardened her. The door opened and let in a rush of warm air, and it entered her captor. That Naruto person, carrying a plate of waffles and a glass of milk. So that was his game then: starve her for a time and then tempt her with food. Nice try, but she wouldn't fall for that. A human body could last up to 3 weeks without food. This was nothing. Feeding time. You're called Artemis right after the goddess herself, fitting since she was an archer and huntress just as well. The whiskered teen spoke in a cheery tone and placed the plate of food in her hands, giving her a warm smile. She merely stared at him coldly, then loosed her hands and allowed the plate of food to drop to the floor and smash apart, making a mess of broken shards and sticky syrup form. Naruto's happy smile fell into a scornful frown, glaring down at the mess on the floor. A simple no would have worked. At least Raven had some manners. Didn't you ever learn it's not good to waste food? He asked her as he crossed his arms, but she continued to stare at him, refusing to let any emotions betray her. Stubborn type, huh? Giving the old silent treatment, he asked her, leaning in closer as they stared each other in the eyes. She then delivered a hard left hook towards his jaw, but thanks to his haki he sensed it coming and leaned back, effectively avoiding her fist. She then made a dash for the door, only for him to grab her by her belt and toss her towards the wall, her backside hitting it hard and knocking the wind out of her. Spirited, huh? That's okay. If you're gonna play hard target, then it just makes me want to play with you more. He spoke with a humorless and empty laugh, almost mocking her for her escape attempt. Go ahead, do whatever you want to me. I won't break, she yelled at him, then spat at him, making a large glob of saliva hit his cheek. Now you're acting like a child. Still, if you want to do this the hard way, I can play that game too. I guess you're anticipating me to torture you or something, but that'd be counterproductive. It'd only strengthen your resolve. But what if I add your teammates to the equation? He asked her, then pulled out a small device from his pocket, making her raise an eyebrow. Feeling a small sense of dread, then some feedback came on from the speakers set into the wall, signaling that they were just turned on. Robin, the Jinchuriki uttered and then pushed the button, causing a long and drawn-out scream to come from the speakers, making Artemis cringe at the sound. It was torturing her friends. She mustn't break. She must not break. She must not show any weakness to him. No, how about Aqualad? Naruto asked as he pushed the button again, earning some loud groans of pain followed by intense screaming. Artemis only stiffened up and stood tall and firm like a statue, unflinching and unwilling to break. If she caved in, then he would have more reason to torture her friends. For now they just needed to hold on for a bit longer. Nothing. Guess you don't feel all that strongly for your teammates then. Or maybe you're hoping I'll get tired of this. What about Kid Flash? Then poor kid might not walk again if we keep applying pressure to his legs. The whiskered teen spoke as he pushed the button once more, which brought out long, higher-pitched screaming, and in between the screams was some gurgling noises. Artemis tried to keep up her poker face, tried to keep herself in control, then it happened. A tear fell from her eye, which alerted her captor to her weak point. Seems we have a winner. Maybe I should turn the boy's legs into a nice crimson paste, Naruto asked, and pushed the button again, and the screams resumed once again. At last, the blonde archer cracked, unable to take the sounds of her boyfriend's screams any longer. Stop, stop, stop hurting him. I'll do anything you want. Just stop whatever it is you're doing to him, she pleaded, looking more like a frightened schoolgirl than a hardened vigilante heroine. Much better. Now strip, the whiskered teen commanded, holding the small device menacingly, almost daring her to refuse. Reluctantly, she ripped off and discarded her clothes, tossing them aside, leaving her only in her underwear and her mask. However, Naruto didn't seem satisfied by this. I said, strip, he ordered much more harshly, the drain from her face when she realized he meant everything. Seeing no choice, she unhooked her bra and pulled down her panties, trying to cover her breasts and her crotch as best she could with her arms and hands. She felt so exposed and vulnerable right now, but she had to protect Wally from further harm. Down on all fours, he ordered her once more. Hot tears welled up in her eyes as she sank slowly to the floor, placing her hands in front of her as she ruefully obeyed, her posture now resembling that of a dog at this point. You just had to make this harder than it needed to be. I was trying to be nice, but it seems you'd rather behave like some kind of animal than as a civilized human being. If that's the case, then you'll be one of my pets. Although I think I'll be more gentle with Miss Mason. You need some discipline. He spoke in a cold voice. He then grabbed her by her ponytail and yanked on it hard, pulling her down to the floor until her face met the sticky mess of waffles she had made earlier. Eat, doggy. Clean up the mess you made, he ordered her, keeping her head firmly in place. Never before had she felt so disgraced and humiliated in her life, being degraded into an animal. But she had no way to resist so long as Wally was in danger, so she began chewing at the syrupy waffles, gobbling them up just like a dog would a piece of meat, until at last she managed to eat it all up, leaving behind a sticky puddle of syrup where they used to be. To be honest, after being forced the meal, she began feeling a little sick, likely from the mixture of emotions she was feeling. Better, much better. You still need some training, but at least you know how to listen. Here, Naruto then pulled out a doggy collar and put it on her neck, causing the clasps to click together, now marking her as a pet. She didn't resist him, how could she? He then smirked and laughed in her face. You know what's funny? I think you wanted to be owned by someone. Deep down, you needed someone to take control of you. You just didn't know how to say it really. Why else would you become my dog so readily? He asked her in a mocking tone, tracing a finger across her lips to pick up some traces of syrup and then it off his fingertip. That's bull. You forced me into this all because you are torturing Kid Flash and the others, she retorted, vehemently refusing him as she glared up at him through tear-filled eyes. You can lie to yourself, but not to me. It wasn't until after you believed that Kid Flash was being tortured did you crack. And here's the truly hilarious bit: aside from the broken leg I gave him during our skirmish, he isn't in any additional pain, much less being tortured. None of them were tortured. This little gizmo in my hand, it's just a pager. And the screams were all pre-recorded. Face it, genius. Deep down, you want to be a pet and to be owned by somebody. I'll leave you alone to let that sink in for a spell. Ciao. Oh, and one more thing, a pet doesn't need clothes. Unless it's for accessory purposes, Naruto explained with a shark-like grin as he left her cell, taking her suit with him, giggling under his breath at the state he left her in. Artemis placed a hand over her mouth in horror, now realizing that she had just been tricked. And even worse, she had allowed it. She could have resisted, could have refused, she could have done anything, but she had obeyed him. Even with the false blackmail, she had still obeyed. He was right, some part of her must have wanted this. Oh my god, what have I done? She whimpered as she hugged her knees to her chest and huddled into a corner, sobbing uncontrollably. It was now inevitable, there was no coming back from this now. Naruto had his claws into her now, and there was no escape at this point. Batgirl's cell, locked up in a dark cell, check. No gadgets or tech, check. No means of communication or way to send and sauce, double check. Nothing new so far, pretty sure I have been in way worse situations. Batgirl muttered to herself, lazily swinging her legs as she sat on the side of her cot, sighing as she rested her head in her open palms, waiting for either a chance for escape or for when help would come. Whichever came first. Yeah, but none of those involved me, or the knowledge of your secret identity, Barbara Gordon, spoke a masculine voice, revealing it to be Naruto, who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, holding a plate of waffles and a glass of milk. She was surprised he had discovered her identity, but then sighed and removed her mask since it was now pointless. Okay, you got me. You did a DNA check and then did a cross-check with medical records, didn't you? She asked him as she crossed her arms under her bust, already figuring out how he had discovered her identity. Smart girl. Yup, that's right. Let me guess, overprotective dad didn't want you joining the police, so you went behind his back and became one of Batman's partners, huh? Naruto asked as he offered the meal to her, although she looked at it with some suspicion. No thanks, not really hungry right now. And yeah, that's the gist of it, she replied, trying to politely refuse the meal in case it were drugged. Surprisingly, the blonde shrugged and began eating it himself, making her swallow dryly and mentally kick herself for saying no to food. MK, short and sweet origin story then. Neat. Your daddy's been a cop for years. Yeah, I'm sure he's been in a ton of bad situations where he had to do whatever it took to live and make it back home to you. The blonde spoke in a casual manner, but Barbara raised an eyebrow. Where are you getting at? She asked him, wondering what kind of point he was trying to make. You really need me to spell it out for you? Then you really that naive? Fine then. Your dad has had to kill crooks to save himself and save others from death. And as police commissioner, he needs to make hard choices to keep the other officers and civilians safe. And you and your Bat family just make it harder for him. Naruto explained in a blunt manner, not pulling any punches at all, leaving Batgirl in a stunned silence. When's the last time? He came home with a smile and a swagger. When is the last time you two had a home-cooked family meal together? All you and your friends do is chuck crooks back into jail. And in the end, they break out again and cause more havoc, putting the police and your dad in mortal danger since they are always on the front lines. How long will it be until your old man gets shot dead by Two-Face, poisoned by Joker? You really want to gamble with your daddy's life just to uphold some unrealistic code of self-righteous justice? How careless and selfish can you be? He asked her heatedly, grilling her on the spot. No words escaped her mouth. All she could do was open and close it, much like a fish out of water. Was it true all along? She had thought of nothing but fighting bad guys and locking them away. Her time with Batman was some of the proudest moments of her life, but she had never thought about what it was doing to her father or the other officers that risked their lives to keep Gotham safe. Bon appetit, the Jinchuriki muttered in a spiteful manner and tossed her a newspaper filled with obituaries for fallen police officers. And then a newspaper clipping was shoved into her hands as well, revealing a picture of her father being transported into an ambulance. The headline reading as Daring Raid, Brave Commissioner Injured While Stopping Illegal Arms Deal. Daddy, she whimpered under her breath and clutched the clipping to her chest, feeling like her heart was twisting into a knot. How much longer, Barbara? How much longer till your dad meets his end? Are you really making Gotham, or anywhere else, any safer? Naruto asked in a more sympathetic tone, placing a hand on her shoulder which made her flinch, but she didn't refuse his touch. You still have your father. I never once got to experience what it meant to have family until but a short time ago. Don't waste it on a frivolous code of self-righteous ethics. Naruto spoke in a gentle tone before giving her a small kiss on the cheek and then left her to her thoughts. What have I even been doing with my life? Batgirl questioned herself as she touched her cheek, then she started to break down crying, realizing how arrogant and self-serving she had been for so long. And she had followed Batman's example, hanged on his every word and lived blindly by the moral code all heroes used. In the end, it was all just a matter of vanity, to be morally superior to everyone else, while the real heroes like the police try to soldier on even without any powers. If she had to be honest with herself, if people like the Joker or Scarecrow died, it wouldn't be a bad thing. Starfire's cell. Well, this will be the last one. So far, I have used quite a number of psychological tricks. But, to my knowledge, Starfire is of a far more innocent mindset. I hate to manipulate a poor and innocent creature like her, but it'll be better than letting the JLA continue their machinations on her. Naruto muttered with a fresh plate of waffles and a glass of milk as he stood outside her cell. He opened it and found the orange-skinned girl to be floating in the air. She stared at him with those adorable emerald eyes as if wondering if he were a threat. Putting on his most charming and welcoming smile, he spoke to her. "Hey there, Starfire. I brought you something to eat. You must be hungry right now." He offered her the meal and suddenly found it missing from his hands, surprised at how she quickly gobbled it down with gusto. It kind of reminded him of when he used to eat at a certain ramen stand back in Konoha. "Thank you for the most sweet and delicious meal. You must actually be a good person. A lot of people in the Earth Justice League has said nothing but bad things about you." She spoke with a large smile, making Naruto think that getting Starfire on his team was actually going to be a hell of a lot easier than he thought. "I don't care what they think of me. They're all biased and pretend to be heroes, hiding behind a glorified credo like a security blanket. Anyways, it's nice to meet you, Starfire. I have had a trying day, feeding your teammates and all that. Trying to help them understand me too. I have gotten varied reactions, but to be so readily welcomed by you is definitely refreshing to say the least. Artemis, for example, was very rude." He spoke with a warm smile, making the Tamaranian blush slightly as she floated about the room, her bubbly personality kind of reminding him of himself during his time as a prankster. "I am sorry new friend Artemis was rude to you." She apologized, her happy expression darkening a bit as she sighed. "Don't apologize for what others do, especially if you had no control of it. Anyways, I am here for something else. In some parts of Earth, when a warrior captures a female specimen, he takes her as a slave or a pet, depending upon their preference. And I hereby claim you as my pet." He spoke, although he wasn't really lying per se, which helped soothe his conscience just a little. "Oh, I see. Then that makes you my master. I am sorry, your planet's customs are still new to me. But this tradition I can understand. Wait, if you defeated me and all of my friends, then you must be a mighty warrior. Does that mean you have lots of female slaves taken from your conquest, all at the ready to be your mates so you may sire strong children to continue your bloodline?" she asked him directly with a much too happy expression. "Haven't gotten to that just yet, but I guess I'll need to do that if I'm going to revive my clan. However, ground rules. I expect loyalty and obedience from my pets at all times, and if you feel comfortable with having with me, then it's all fine. I won't force myself on an unwilling pet. Serve me faithfully and loyally and you will live in comfort and happiness. Disrespect me, my godmother, or my late mother, then you will be punished. If you ever betray me, then I'll see to it that you wish for death as a mercy." He explained in a matter-of-fact tone, since those were his only rules when it came to having slaves. "Yes, master, I shall be the best pet you could ever want. Command me however you like. If it be your wish, then I shall fulfill your every desire to make you happy and earn your love," she vowed in a sweet and innocent manner. "Wow, that was easy. Well, my first order is that here in mine and my godmother's base, you are to be completely naked at all times save for this collar, or if I wish, dress in something to fit my tastes. Whenever you're outside the base to do my bidding, you are permitted to wear your own clothes again, but the collar stays on. Is that clear?" he asked her, earning a nod from the orange-skinned girl. Without any hesitation, she quickly discarded her clothes and folded them into a neat pile that she placed onto her cot. She then readily showed off her luscious orange skin and curves, hoping to please him further. With a smile, he placed the collar around her neck with a sharp click. "Thank you for claiming me, master. I hope you will be happy with me as your loyal pet. I promise to never betray you, and I promise to do my best to not displease you." She spoke happily and then hugged him, pressing her breasts against his chest. She quickly released him and bowed apologetically. "I am sorry. I am not to touch the master without his permission." She whimpered ashamedly, believing that she had done something wrong. Cupping her chin, the Jinchuriki lifted her head up so her eyes would meet his and then spoke in a gentle tone. "Don't you worry. As my pet, I won't punish you unless it is truly needed. And if you do something wrong without realizing it, I'll give you a fair warning. It wouldn't be right to punish you for any honest mistakes." He then kissed both of her cheeks, making her beam in pure joy for having such a kind master. "And one more thing. Stop calling me master. Call me Naruto," he requested, making her nod in agreement to this. With that said and done, he escorted his new pet out of her cell to take her to more comfortable accommodations. Meanwhile, in Gotham City, below ground inside of a bat-infested cave, was the man, the myth, the legend, the Batman himself, sitting in front of his supercomputer, tapping away at the keyboard as he looked over the footage that had been broadcasted when this Naruto character fought and subdued the entire team single-handedly and with minimal effort. He had watched the same footage for some hours on end, trying to come up with the boy's weakness. Possible psionic abilities, precognition strong enough to harm a Kryptonian without any kryptonite present. Shows talent in martial arts, Batman muttered to himself as he worked on finding a way to beat this new menace. Unfortunately, he was a total mystery that only appeared a short time ago. It was almost like he stepped out of thin air without any real rhyme or reason. "Perhaps, Master Bruce, you would be able to think more efficiently with a full stomach," asked the ever-loyal butler. Alfred spoke with his usual bit of wisdom as he placed a serving tray close by and then served a fresh cup of tea. "Thanks, Alfred. This Naruto kid, I can't seem to get a good reading on him. There is next to nothing known about him, and it is extremely difficult to understand the true nature of his powers. And we must come up with a plan to rescue the team as quickly as possible, Bruce replied as he sipped at the tea. I may not directly participate in the field, Master Bruce, but while you and your JLA made the first move against him and this roulette woman, you forced their hand, and they retaliated. Not just that, he questioned your principles and the logic of your code. Public opinion has been slowly turning against the Justice League and are questioning the effectiveness of superheroes around the world. Alfred spoke, giving his viewpoint of the situation. Our justice and code keeps people safe, and we don't become like the criminals we fight. Bruce responded as he replayed the footage once more. For a time, yes, it has worked, but there lies a serious flaw in your code to consider. If evil is not appropriately punished and allowed to persist without true consequence, are we truly the solution to the problem, or are we simply interfering with them and giving them the chance to improve their technique and skill in destruction and death? Maybe our way just isn't good enough anymore. People felt like men such as Victor Zsasz were not getting the punishment they deserve, so they turned to Roulette and this Naruto person to do what we refuse to. The loyal butler spoke in a somewhat dejected voice, sad to see what became of events, but also seeing the reasoning and logic behind it all. What do you suggest we do? Alfred Batman asked with a sigh, hoping his oldest friend and ally's wisdom could help him. Discretion is the better part of valor in times like these, Master Bruce. We played with fire and were severely burned. We should not make that mistake a second time. Perhaps the best solution would be to swallow our pride and negotiate, Alfred offered, hoping to sway his charge from a self-destructive course of action. Negotiate with them? Bruce asked, a grimace forming on his face at the idea. If it gets Master, Miss Barbara and all the others out of this alive, then yes. Do you truly wish to subject them to greater danger? Alfred almost demanded, hoping that wasn't the case. No, you're right. The ball is in their court right now. I'll make the call. Hopefully we can settle the score with them after we rescue the team. Bruce spoke and then tapped a few keys on the back computer until a phone line began ringing. It didn't take long until someone answered, prompting the Batman to speak. Roulette, this is Batman speaking. Let's talk. Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.